The Football Trash Talk for Real Fans podcast is an unscripted and free-flowing conversation that may touch on mature subjects. While the opinions are real, the research probably isn't, and we can't help that Atticus will probably talk about the Knicks.
And here we go.
He trucked dudes. It wasn't just in a preseason game. He did it pretty consistently. He left dudes saying, "What happened?"
You better put some respect on his name when we're talking about the champion, the Davion Clown.
And I'm just going on eye test here, right? Like, I like the look of this coaching staff, you know?
All right, enough of this.
Here we
Let's
are.
see what kind of shit we get into
We've made it
today.
past the quarter century mark. Episode 26.
Boy, it's all yours.
Football Trash Talk for Real Fans Podcast. Otherwise known as the FYT Podcast or Fuck Your Team Podcast. And it's about to get real on the podcast, I think, right? Like, we've had a lot of fun up till now.
We're actually starting to plan conversations instead of just completely winging it. We discussed a couple things we want to talk about today. Prepping. Weird
Prepping and football. And we have football. We have actual football to discuss instead of, trying to lament on basketball and other things. But, we'll still get into some
preseason football. It's not, is it real football yet? Like,
it depends on how you look at preseason, right? Like, if you're going in like, oh, they're going to fucking win and blah, 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 like you're in for a bad day, right? If you're looking to see like, okay, what do they got, right? What did I see? Example, Eagles game. I see that we have two solid fucking tight ends. Don't trade either one, right? Like, just don't. There's no need to trade Zach Ertz. Don't do it. Like, especially with Jalen Hurts, I think that having two outlets for little short dumps is a boost of confidence to his accuracy, right?
Right.
And then I found out Quez Watkins is really fast, right? Like I had no idea, right? And when he took that ball to the house, I was like, whoa, where did this guy come from? So there was a couple things that I was just looking for. If I moved off the Eagles, I'm looking at Justin Fields had a really nice game. I'm pretty certain like they're not going to get away with him not starting week 1 if he continues that in preseason. The defense, first team defense for the Browns looked phenomenal, and they didn't even all play. Who's that guy you guys drafted? He dropped heavily. Joke.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He looked. Just made me sore in my heart again because I wanted the Eagles to pick him. But
and we'll talk about the Browns game a little bit here in a minute. But yeah, he I wanted him to be the first round pick. So the fact that he was there, I remember getting pumped when the Browns traded up to get him. Fenton looked good, who was our 7th round pick. The Browns didn't start any offensive starters. Maybe a couple guys on the line that were recovering from injury. But outside of that, none of our starters played last night. They still looked pretty good, I thought. But then again, it's against the Jaguars, and it's game 1 of the preseason. I will say, the most interesting preseason stat I've heard so far? So I've always jokingly, because especially in the group, a lot of people will talk a bunch of crap about the preseason, and every year I would put up how the Browns have only lost like 4 preseason games in the last 5 years or something like that. I forget what their record is now. But apparently the Baltimore Ravens, now I didn't watch the whole game last night, so I don't know if they won last night or not, but apparently they have not lost a preseason game since like 2015.
Really?
Yeah, they're on like a 20-something game preseason winning streak. So
they beat the Saints last night for their 18th straight preseason win.
Yeah, so that's getting up to like Undertaker at WrestleMania kind of statistics. But I found that kind of, I don't know why, the fact that we know that just kind of cracked me up a little bit. I mean, good for them. It's a weird crown to wear,
Yeah, weird crown. Notice that The Giants look like shit. I know it's preseason, but like, come on now. Come on now. They did not look good at all.
I didn't watch that one, but I was into the so unfortunately we couldn't get the Green Bay one down here. We went to a sports bar, Liesl and I did. We couldn't get the Green Bay game down here, so she was keeping tabs on her phone. Jordan Love had himself a first half, from what I understand.
He had a decent first half. He looks good.
A lot of the rookie quarterbacks.
Zach Wilson settled in nice.
Zach Wilson settled nice. Who's the dude on Chicago from Ohio State?
Justin Fields. That's who I led with.
Yeah,
there's no way they can start Andy Dalton. If he keeps doing that, there's just no way that.
Well, some of it though, I mean, again, you don't know. Like, the thing is, we assume they're playing starters, but there were like one of the touchdowns he had, like the dude, I think it was a tight end that was just like completely there was one within 15 yards. Like, it was like the blownest of blown coverage, like in the history of blown coverage. So you don't know who's out there for the Dolphins, right? I don't know the Dolphins roster intimately enough to be like, oh yeah, they did that against the starters.
What do we think is going to happen this year, right? Like, so they lose a preseason game, and it was usually week 3. Week 3 was your barometer. You get your first string in there for at least the first half, get them some game time speed, and then call it a day, right? So now they only have 3 preseason games.
Well, it's interesting.
What are they going to do?
Because, haven't the Rams, like McVay, has made noise because he routinely doesn't play his starters throughout preseason, right? Like, he just doesn't do it. Unless you're seeing, I guess at this point, take the Browns. We have everyone coming back on offense. There's no new, we have a couple rookies that are like the 4th receiver or the 3rd running back, stuff like that. But they got playing time last night, with the exception of Schultz, the receiver, because he's got a hamstring thing. I guess to me at this point, depending on your team, and if you have a rookie quarterback, play him. But, so unlike the Browns, the Chiefs, you really need Patrick Mahomes shredding, someone's 3rd string defense right now. All you're doing is risking energy, risking injury. I think, unless you see something in practice where something just needs to be ironed out, like something's just not flowing right, I don't see a need. They're professionals. I don't buy into the whole we need to play it, because preseason's not actual game speed anyway for the most part. And I just think you're opening your team up to injury that doesn't need to be there in a game that's, ultimately meaningless.
I completely agree. I kind of relate that to Max Holloway in the UFC. His last fight, he came out and, they made a big stint about him, not sparring at all in that training camp, right? And his thing was like, look, I've been sparring for 20 years. Like, I don't need to spar. And he routinely went on to put on a boxing clinic like no one's ever seen before, right? Like no one's ever seen. So, hey, maybe there's something to that, right? Like, maybe McVay's onto something. Maybe we don't need to be playing our starters. Meanwhile, it's my understanding that Tampa Bay is playing all their starters.
Yeah, I think Brady. I think he played like the first 2 series, because being in Florida, they were the featured game at the place we went. So I think I wasn't paying a lot of attention. Obviously, I was more into the Jacksonville Browns game. I think Brady played a couple series. But it goes back to my question. Like, why do you need Tom Brady? Like, Tom Brady's been doing this for literally 22 years now. What's he going to do or see in a preseason game? You know what I'm saying? Like, the defenses are vanilla. They're not doing, you're playing especially they're throwing people out there that probably aren't going to make the team. It's just, what's the point? Like, try out your rookies. Maybe if you pick up some free agents that need some extra reps in your offense or defense or whatever. For the Browns, having your defense starters makes sense out there, because we have, of the 11 guys on defense, 9 of them are new. So yeah, it makes sense to get them in game-like conditions to learn to communicate and stuff like that. But even they don't need to be playing the full game. They're all still professionals.
Well,
So
it's kind of a bullshit statement by Bruce Arians too. Like I think they played the first series. Tom Brady's 1 for 2. Fournette had a couple carries. Jones had 1 carry. Like come on, like so they played a quarter or a series, and then they sat. So, yeah, there's no need to play your starters.
there's no need. There's none. And you're like I just look at it. It would be like going to the gym, warming up, lifting like half a set, and then like you're like, all right, and then just like sitting in the corner drinking water the rest of the time you're there. Like what's even the point? Like have him show up in street clothes. Let him be comfortable. You've earned it. You know what? I'm not your biggest fan, Tom Brady, but God damn it, I respect you, and you've earned the right during preseason games to sit there on the sidelines in your civvies, chugging Gatorade and posing with babies. That's all you should be doing during preseason games. You've earned it, big guy.
I think we need to let him know. You know, Tom, you should hook into the podcast, and you know that you have Chris's blessing to sit for all preseason games.
I mean, he's only a 10. I can drive down there and be like, I'll bring a sign.
Yeah, and if Bruce has a problem with that, he can clock in too.
Tell him he can come on the podcast and talk to us about it.
Nice.
I was just talking to Lisa yesterday. I need to find more guests. I like having guests on here. Not that I don't enjoy just our back and forth, but guests are fun.
Yeah, it would be really cool to have some guests, right?
Yeah.
As long as they're meaningful.
Yeah.
You know.
So this week we wouldn't be a real NFL based podcast if prior to the start of the season we were already making playoff and Super Bowl predictions. So there are 2 questions. One you kind of asked us to kind of think about heading into this week, which we'll get to in a minute. But there's this other one I saw which I found kind of interesting. Of the teams, and I'll run through them in a second, but of the AFC teams that made the playoffs last year, which do you think is most likely not to make the playoffs this year? So, for example, in the AFC, we had the Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Titans, Ravens, Browns, Colts. Those were the teams that made the playoffs last year from the AFC. In order, what do you think? What do you think is from least likely to most likely to remake the playoffs?
You put that on the trash talk page, didn't you?
I didn't. I think someone else might have. I didn't see it, but I didn't. I saw that on. I think it was Black Adam Schefter. I got that from.
Yeah, I saw your repost, so I wasn't sure where it came from, but so I'm going to say in order's tough, right? I don't think the Steelers are going to make the playoffs, and like I go back and forth with this one. Because in Mike Tomlin's tenure, the Steelers have never finished below 500. Not once, right? So, like, it's really hard for me to say they're going to have a bad year. And that's with, like, there was a year or so without Ben in there, right? Like, Ben was out pretty much for an entire year, one of those seasons. So, still didn't finish below 500. So, you know, that puts them at 9-8, right? Is 9-8 good enough to make the playoffs? And this goes back to our conversation from last week. We're going to see a lot more 10-7 teams, and it's going to be jockeying for position in week 17 to find out who gets into the playoffs. So I could legitimately see the Steelers going 10-7 and missing the playoffs.
I think if the Steelers were in a different division, right? Like, just because, like, last year, 3 teams came from the North. And one could argue the Browns are better. One could argue the Ravens are better. And one can argue the Steelers took a step back. Because the Steelers won the North last year. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that they're realistically going to do that. Obviously, I'd say the Browns are going to do it. But realistically, the Browns and the Ravens, one of them are going to win the North. I don't see the North producing 3 teams again for the playoffs. So, yeah, the Steelers are one. The Colts are another. They were a wild card team last year. And, in fact, without a starting quarterback, I'd say they're least likely to remake the playoffs. So they'd be number 1 on my least likely list, followed by the Steelers. Because, see, then it gets kind of tricky because, like, I don't look at Tennessee and look at them as a major Super Bowl threat. but at the same time, someone has to win the South, and it's going to be most likely them, right? Like, I don't see another team winning the AFC South.
Who?
The AFC South, the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else comes out of that division.
So I mean, that puts them in just by winning the South. Do you see anyone challenging the Bills in the East? Now, what I could see is the Patriots or the Dolphins sliding into one of the wild card slots, and that's where we see some turnover. But I think the Bills are most assuredly going to make it. The Chiefs will make it. And unless something catastrophic happens, either Baltimore or Cleveland is going to be the North winner, and the other one's going to be a wild card. Barring like something like Lamar Jackson getting hurt or something like that. So of those teams, I think Indianapolis is least likely to make it, followed by Pittsburgh. And then after that, I think the other, and this of course means I'm probably going to be way wrong, but all the rest I can't see, because all the rest are our division winners, plus one wild card team. So I just don't see any of those other teams sliding far back enough not to win, unless some other team just comes completely out of nowhere.
So, and I'm going to kind of segue or foreshadow into our next question, right? Because when we're talking the Chiefs, Bills, Titans, and Browns, like there's a few teams in NFL each year that could say like we have a shot to win the Super Bowl, right? Like legitimately, we have a shot. I think those 4 teams legitimately have a shot. Maybe not Tennessee, right? Like because their defense was a little bit atrocious, which is kind of shocking because they're coach Vrabel, right? You would think that like he would want to have a stout defense, but like maybe they're like, you have 1, 2, and 3 that have, I'd say, legitimate shot, right? Kansas City, Buffalo, Cleveland, right? But Tennessee's not far off of those 3 teams. So those 4 teams are getting into the playoffs. That's all there is to it, right? That leaves, the teams you mentioned, the Ravens, they should get a wild card. Like they should be 11-5, right? They have a beast of a schedule, but they should still be 11-5.
11-6.
11-6. Fuck you. No, never mind. And like I forgot about the Colts, not like without a quarterback. Yeah, they're probably most likely. If Wentz miraculously heals and gets off his wheelchair and can actually do something there, I don't know. There are weird things that happen in Indianapolis, so they're a wild card. I just don't. I agree. I don't see 3 teams coming out of the North.
Yeah, what's interesting. And I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember exactly where I went. I read it, but as opposed to odds of winning the Super Bowl, I saw something put a percent, like a literal percent chance, and I just remember Cleveland Browns had a 5% chance of winning the Super Bowl.
Right.
And it gave the Baltimore Ravens a 5% chance of winning the Super Bowl too. And it said either team would be higher if the other team wasn't in the same division.
Right.
So that's, I think, the Browns, for as much as this is a trash talk thing and I kind of get on their bandwagon a lot, the Browns were legitimate this year, but I'd say the Ravens are up there. It's just, it's weird. The Ravens always seem to do a lot better in the preseason the regular season. And then things really tighten up in the playoffs and they just, their offense just gets shut down for some reason. And I can't figure out why.
As much as we like, 80 yards touchdowns and, the speed of the game and, 35 for 42 passing for 9,000 yards, right? As much as we like all of that, as fans, it's defense and running that wins in the playoffs, period. End of story. And like, they have a running quarterback, but did they have a running game? J.K. Dobbins is okay. I think he's going to have a nice leap forward this year. But they didn't have I don't want to say they didn't have a running game, but they didn't have Cleveland's running game, right? And Tampa Bay had a running game, right? They had a 2-headed monster. You know, what did Kansas City not have? Or they didn't run the ball.
Right. So I'm going to kick it over to the NFC, where last year we had Green Bay, New Orleans, Seattle, the football team from Washington, Tampa Bay, LA Rams, and the Chicago Bears. So out of those teams, Chicago, question mark, rookie quarterback, they kind of squeaked into the playoffs anyway. So I think they're probably the biggest question mark. But the other, and then you got the Saints. You no longer have Drew Brees. They're kind of a question mark. The Buccaneers are in their division. I don't see New Orleans winning the South this year. So can they come back as a wild card? I mean, come back to me in week 6 and we'll see how they're playing. The other team I could see taking a step back is Seattle. There just seems to be like a bad vibe around that team. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there just seems to be some unhappy feelings. I don't know. They don't seem to be like they're getting along because they're winning, but they seem like that team where if they come out of the gate like 1-5 or 2-4 or something, you're going to be seeing headlines on ESPN about fights in the locker room or something like that. Like they just have that kind of feel to them. And I think LA Rams also, who had their number last year in the playoffs anyway, I think they improved. They're probably the most improved in that division. And the 49ers aren't beat to hell this year either. So I think that division is going to be tougher. I don't think Seattle wins it. And if I had to pick a winner that like a team that won their division last year that might not make the playoffs this year, the Saints. It would be the Saints or the Seahawks. So the NFC I feel like is more wide open than the AFC. The AFC is very top heavy. The NFC, like all those teams could make it. None of those teams could make it. And with the exception of the Buccaneers, I wouldn't be that surprised.
So the NFC is wild. It's the Wild West. When we talk about, okay, Green Bay has a legitimate shot, Tampa Bay has a legitimate shot. Everything else is on the table to me, right? Everything else. Chicago Bears, what are they going to? Are they going to start Justin Fields? Is he going to light it up? I don't know. The Rams are probably like in that Tennessee Titan realm, right? Like, so I think the Rams should win that division, right? Just on paper. They have the best defense, but their running game is in question, right? Like Cam Akers is out. So the 49ers are better. The Seahawks, it's a little bit of a mess, right? And then you mentioned the Saints. The Saints are a train wreck right now. What's going on in New Orleans, right? Like, I mean, they got some problems there. They don't have a starting quarterback yet. They have trouble with their number one wide receiver. And, they had some retirement on the defensive side of the ball that came out of nowhere too, right? I think the Saints are 7-10. I don't think they have a good year at all. So that leaves, Tampa Bay is going to win that division. I don't know if anybody else, Carolina's not going to make that kind of jump, not with a rookie quarterback. Well, not rookie, but might as well be a rookie. But maybe Sam Darnold shows up. Who knows? But legitimately speaking, I think there's 4 shifts. Maybe the NFC West is the division that sends 3 teams to the playoffs, right? Because
if it's any one of them, it's going to be the West. Yeah, because you could legitimately make a case. You could definitely make a case for the Rams and Niners making the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And then Seattle, even though we seem to be teetering on them, they keep winning. So until shown otherwise, you can make a case for Seattle, right? So that's 3 teams right there. I'm going to ask you about the East. I'll let you talk about the East here. I'm not like you see Washington football team up there.
I'm not all in. I'm not all in with the Washington football team.
They don't excite me. The only thing about them is they have the best. They have the best defense in the division, right?
Easily.
And do I think any of the other teams can really give them? I mean, not out of what I've seen out of the Giants, not really. The Cowboys, maybe, but they kind of have a weird funk around them too, and
Dak's got a shoulder problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see. Yeah, so I mean, Washington almost feels like they're going to win this meet just because someone has to.
But
Go
no one's repeated in the East since 2004. Not a team, not one. Right. So like, I've heard a lot of people say it, that, and I think I've mentioned it. I think the East isn't going to be Drek like they were last year, but it's still going to be a dogfight for who wins that division. It's going to be, and I guess we'll see when all the starters are on the field. But right now, Dallas is unimpressive. Washington didn't blow the doors off. They didn't look, like, oh, this is it. We're done. It's ours to lose. The Giants looked pitiful against the Jets. I mean, literally 0 points through 3 quarters. Like, you can't put any points on the board. Come on now. You're supposed to have this awesome offense, and nothing happened. Now, I know Saquon and Handy Danny didn't play, but, 0 points.
Well, Handy Danny wasn't in, so therefore. Yeah, I can't wrap my mind around crap. Now I'm drawing a blank. The Washington quarterback.
Fitzpatrick.
Fitzmagic, division winner. Just doesn't sound right, does it? Like,
he's done it before. So, he's been a division winner before. So it's not like it's impossible.
He's always good when he's playing for a contract. When he gets the contract, that's when he's that's when he struggles. So we'll see. The Bears, no. I mean, the surest things in the NFC, like you touched on, Packers, Bucks, and everything else. We could come back. Yeah, we'll visit this at the end of the season, obviously, and you could throw any number of teams. The only things that would surprise me if the Buccaneers and the Packers weren't there. That's it. So from there, we're going to kind of pivot into the question you asked us to kind of think about this week. And so from all those teams we just mentioned, let's say the truth, we're going to we'll do 6 because I feel weird not including the Ravens because I like, as much as I want to be like, oh yeah, the Browns are going to win the division hands down. Like, they're going to be neck and neck with the Ravens all year. So we're going to say the Super Bowl favorites, and this isn't in any particular order. I'm just going to go AFC and NFC, but the Super Bowl contenders from both divisions today are Cleveland, Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, and then Tampa Bay and Green Bay from the NFC. So of those teams, what are their biggest Achilles heels? What do you think prevents them from being the odds-on favorite? And I think right now Tampa Bay or Kansas City is probably the odds-on favorite to win. I don't have it in front of me, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's one of those two. But what's their Achilles heel? What do you think is the biggest bugaboo of either Tampa Bay repeating or one of these teams dethroning?
So I think that I'll start with the Chiefs because they're the favorite, right? It obviously comes down to Mahomes, right? Like, Mahomes is going to dictate. No, you know what? Retract that. Because that's just too easy to say. Clyde, I can't even pronounce this running back's name, but Clyde, we'll just call him Clyde. His second year running back, is he gonna, be able to duplicate what he did at a higher volume, right? That's their biggest Achilles heel, right? But then if I take that even a step further, it's their offensive line. So they kind of, repiece that line together. Do they gel? And can they get a running game going? That's going to make or break the Kansas City Chiefs. We all know they're going to be there. They're going to win 13, 14 games. It's going to happen. But that is what's going to take them over the top, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same thing. They need to show a running game, and I still think the defense, while they were improved last year, still leaves a little to be desired for what someone you'd want to consider a Super Bowl favorite. They kind of bucked the trend because I don't think their defense has been what many would consider like a bona fide. They have an opportunistic defense. They don't necessarily have a shut them down defense, which I think for most people, when you talk about, we tend to rank defenses like, oh yeah, based on their defense alone, we get like, we say it all the time about the Washington football team. We don't know about their offense, but their defense is pretty stout. I don't know if their defense is one I point to and say, yeah, if for whatever reason the offense is misfiring, or they run into the Buccaneers again, I see their defense holding them in it. Their defense, I think, got exposed a little bit last year, especially in the Super Bowl. Maybe not as fast as we thought they were. And I don't know that they took a lot of steps to improve it this year. So there's that. Also, and it should not be understated, there's always that we lost the Super Bowl hangover. Always seems to hit the loser a little harder than it hits the winner. So they won it, and then they made it back and kind of got crushed. So it'll be interesting to see if they have any hangover effects, which always seems to, like I just said, always seems to affect the loser more than it seems to affect the winner. So that, I know it's kind of like not really something you can quantify, but that's something I just working against them based on history. Who was on the Madden cover this year? Anyone?
Who is on the Madden cover?
Anyone valuable we have to worry about?
Let's find out.
While you're looking that up, I'm gonna go ahead.
It's Mahomes and Brady. Ooh.
Oof. Yikes. Sorry about that. Sorry, guys. That's not
which takes me to Brady, right? Like I think Brady's the key for Tampa Bay, right? Like, is he going to? Can he continue with his Ponce de Leon, approach to his work ethic and all that, and stay young, or is he automatic? Is he all of a sudden going to look old? Because I don't, when I look at Drew Brees, I don't remember 2 years ago, but last year he looked old, right? Like it just caught up with him, and it was just like, oh, yeah, he needs to retire.
Yeah, well, Drew Brees, Drew Brees, I think longevity went kind of to the brilliance of his head coach, because if you watch Drew Brees, like the last 4 years, the dude never threw it more than 10 yards down the field. Like it was all quick slants that would go for a touchdown. That's why they would have so much trouble in the playoffs, because you can't rely on that specific type of offense in the playoffs. Brady, we keep waiting for that him just to hit that wall, and he just doesn't seem to yet. I mean, there's that video that circulated of him throwing the football into the I don't know what that machine's called, but the one that receivers usually use, where it
Doug's machine.
Yeah, throwing him at that, and it comes back at him, and he knocks it over. There's that. I mean, I didn't see anything last year that says this year's the year he's gonna, other than a couple games where he forgot what down it is and stuff like that. But whatever.
Hey, when you have your AARP card, man, you tend to forget things from that.
Well, and I think with Tom Brady, we're kind of starting to see him do. He's kind of turning into like the NFL's version of an NBA player, in that he kind of coasts through the first part of the season,
Yep.
And then come the home stretch and into the playoffs, he just flips a switch and kicks it into another gear. I think the first 10 games this year, not that he doesn't try, but there's a different intensity, right? And I think we saw that last year. I couldn't exactly tell you what week, but it seemed like after a certain week, he's like, yeah, we're not going to lose anymore. And they did, and I think he has the ability to do that. Maybe some of it's just because he's been around so long, some of it's the age. But but I agree. They're going to go as far as Tom Brady will take them. And as of right now, that seems like that doesn't seem to be, if Tom Brady's your worst problem, you're doing pretty well. I don't know. Do they have a bad special teams or anything?
No, they don't. They're bringing everybody back. you got to go sans any injuries, right? Like we can't
Right.
say that's the Achilles heel because that's every team's Achilles heel, right? Like so, it's the Tampa Bay. The odds on favorite right now is the Chiefs at plus 500. Bucks are at plus 600. Then the next closest is the Bills at plus 1,000. So it's a nice little jump from the Chiefs and Bucks to the Bills, right? And they got the Bills higher than the Browns. And I think it's what you said. Like the Browns are in the same division as the Ravens. And that's
what are the Ravens odds? What are they at?
plus 1,400, and the Browns are at plus 1,600.
Yeah, and that's what I've read. Is they each of those teams, like the Browns and the Ravens, pull each other's odds down because they're in the same division. If they were like if the Browns were in the South, they'd have higher odds to win it all than they do now. But because they're in the North against the Ravens, and the Ravens would have higher odds too. So let's talk about one of them. Let's go. We'll go. You want to do Browns or Ravens? I'll let you pick.
I mean, let's do the Browns, right? Like, I mean, I think that, the Browns, I mean, on paper, they have almost everybody coming back. The pieces that they fit in were pieces that made sense. It was a really good offseason for Cleveland. It's second year head coach. What do you do with that? Everybody talks about Baker doesn't need to do Lamar-esque or Mahomes-esque things, right? And I agree with that. But Baker needs to do Baker things, right? And Baker, until now has never really been, I think year over year, he's had a new offense. So now it's going to be a second year in the same offense. That's kind of their Achilles heel. Is Baker going to be able to, make the necessary adjustments to continue his rise? I think the answer is yes. I just don't. I don't see any other area that I would call an Achilles heel, right? Like I think it. If I was going to say anything, it would be Odell, right? How does Odell fit back into this team?
So I think Odell, I'm not as worried about that because before he got injured, I mean, the biggest thing for me, the two biggest things for me is one, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Can Baker continue to advance? Baker's either going to be the biggest boon to this team this year or their biggest drawback.
Yeah.
That's it. Like it's going to, and I hate to keep revolving around one player, but for the Browns especially, it is. It's can Baker continue to evolve? We saw Odell basically manhandle the Cowboys by his lonesome in that game. Like he caught 2 touchdowns and ran for another to win that game in Dallas last year. So I think fitting a talent like Odell, I'm not so worried about. Maybe the chemistry between him and Baker has never really seemed to get ironed out as much as I would like. But maybe having a year, the year Baker did last year once Odell went down, gave him the confidence to kind of, because I feel when Odell first came to the league or first came to the team rather, there was I got to get the superstar of the ball come hell or high water. We're getting it to Odell, whether it makes sense in the situation or not. I don't see that being a thing this year. The other big question mark is will the defense gel? It's one thing to go out and get all these players. It's another thing to have all these players play as a unit. So how quickly can they gel? I mean, we start off right off the bat on the road in Kansas City. We don't have I think we talked about last week, we have the 9th hardest schedule. So will the defense gel? We got a couple rookies playing key positions. And while we did get some good pieces around them, you're working with new people. You got to learn how they react to different things. So that could take, hopefully that doesn't take a long time. So that would be the other question mark. The third minor question mark, their return game isn't the greatest. I think last year they were bottom of the league, like in return yards on both kickoffs and punts. I'd like to see that improve, but that's getting kind of nitpicky because I follow the Browns. But yeah, I agree. It's going to be Baker, a little bit of Odell, but I think Odell, if they're winning, Odell seems like the type of dude where if they're winning, as much as he has he's not Keyshawn Johnson, right? He's not shut up and get me the damn ball. I think if they're winning, Odell's going to be fine. It's if they're not winning, Odell will become more of a problem. I know you said you gotta get going. You want to tackle one more team and then cut it off there. Or?
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. So let's go to the Packers. We'll kick it back over to the NFC. I think they'll win their division pretty easily. Their biggest thing is, it's Aaron Rodgers last year. With how this offseason went, there's kind of, it's kind of weird thing. They're bringing back some of the oldies, and apparently there's a push to bring back Clay Matthews for some reason.
What?
Yeah. So it's like a legit thing. They're trying to bring back. I don't think the team is so much as the fans are clamoring for it, but like there seems to be this nostalgia kick going on. I mean, the biggest thing stopping the Packers from winning it all is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't see a reason why they're going to get past them, especially if the Bucs win the South like we think they're going to do. That turns that game that was at Green Bay into a game at Tampa, and I don't think Green Bay goes to Tampa and beats the Super Bowl champs in the championship round. So, I mean, that's their biggest roadblock, right? Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, because Rodgers is Rodgers. The defense is what it is. They re-signed, their key running back, Devontae Adams being, not on a new contract could be a distraction. But by and large, I just think it's the Buccaneers. It's the biggest thing they have to get around because Green Bay every year, nothing flashy about them, but they get it done, and they're in a division they can win. So
they should hands down win the division. Unless Minnesota makes some miraculous turnaround on defense, it's Green Bay's division to lose, right? I think their biggest Achilles heel is their front office, right? Like they don't really make a big splash in anything to improve the team where they need improvements, right? Like, so Aaron comes back. They signed your girl's boy, Randall Cobb, right? They have a good running game. Aaron Jones is nice. They have a decent tight end. Their defense is a little bit questionable. But like when you look at this franchise and their front office, you had Brett Favre into Aaron Rodgers, and that's what, a 25-year span? 2 Super Bowls? 2? You have arguably 2 of the best quarterbacks ever. Top 10 for sure, right? Like, so let's just call that what it is. And you amassed 2 Super Bowls. That screams front office to me. That screams like, we just, we're almost there. We just can't get it done.
Well, that's the thing. That I feel like Green Bay for the last 15 years has been almost there. And with the exception of 2007, they've been almost there, right? Like they have enough to win the division. The Green Bay Packers, and I'm gonna kind of draw a weird parallel here, but they're like the Minnesota Twins. Like the Minnesota Twins, for the most part, they're probably the team to beat in their division in baseball. They're in the Indians division, but their owner pretty much says it makes the most sense for me to do enough to make the playoffs, and then hey, if we happen to win it all once we're in the playoffs, great. But making the playoffs, that gets me the extra money to keep this team going.
Yeah,
and that just kind of seems what Green Bay is like. We're going to do just enough to make sure we win the North every year. And then if we happen to catch fire at the right time, win the Super Bowl, great. But otherwise, we did our job if we won the North and made the playoffs. That's all we're worried about.
Yep.
And it shows. It shows. So, yeah, I agree. Their biggest bugaboo is their front office that just seems unable or unwilling. I can't tell. I mean, I'm willing to give some credence to the fact that there are people that just don't want to go be in Green Bay because it's Green Bay, which, let's be honest, if the NFL were to start right now, Green Bay would not have a team. That's just not something that would happen. So I kind of get that. But at the same time, I don't know, just because you play for Green Bay, you don't have to live in Green Bay year round. Get your little condo in Green Bay and get your house wherever the hell. So I don't know if I buy that, but I'm willing to put some stock in that. But it's the NFL. Making it the NFL is the NFL. Yeah, their front office. Their front office is it. Their defense, I don't know if they improved it enough to do it, but yeah, I still say a combination of the front office and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are their biggest Achilles heel this year. I just don't think I don't see anything on paper. Randall Cobb doesn't move the needle enough for me to say, yeah, they're gonna beat Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, because that's what it's gonna come down to.
It's if anyone's gonna derail Tampa Bay, it would be Green Bay. I just don't see it. They were 13-3 back to back.
And like they've been, it's funny because every year somehow they do it, and I just don't. And maybe that's the thing. Like maybe Aaron Rodgers is just way better than we give him credit for. Because like you just said, like the way you just said that, 13-3 back to back. Like you look at this team and you're like, they have no reason to be 13-3, right? Like they're the worst quote unquote 13-3 team in existence, yet they do it every freaking year. Because even before that, they're like 12-5 or something. You know, it's like. So I mean, yeah, they're that team that every year you're like, oh, it's Green Bay, and you don't pay attention to it, but then you come back and look at the NFC North standings in week 14, and you're like, why is Green Bay like 10-3? Like what is going on? Like every year, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is just way better than we're giving him credit for it, and it just really is. He's making wine, he's turning water into wine every week. And we just don't realize it. And not just
I think that's a big part of it, right? Like, yeah. I think Aaron Rodgers is legitimately, people talk about Dan Marino only making one Super Bowl, right? And losing. People are going to talk about Aaron Rodgers only making one Super Bowl and winning, right? So he won one, but, he never really got elsewhere. If you take that barometer away, like he may be the GOAT, right? Like I know what Peyton did. I know what Tom's done. I know what Drew Brees did. I know what Joe Montana did. I if I'm starting a team right now, I think I want Rodgers as my quarterback.
Right.
He's the way, and he looks so effortless out there, and he just who was Jordy Nelson before and after Aaron Rodgers?
Right. I mean, and that's the thing with Devontae Adams. Is Devontae Adams, or is Devontae Adams because he plays with Aaron Rodgers? And, all those other quarterbacks you named, I could name defensive players on every one of those quarterbacks' teams. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the exception of A.J. Hawk. And that's more because he's an Ohio State guy. And I grew up in Columbus while he was in his heyday, and AJ Hawk wasn't an all-star by any means. He was like a name more than he was like a greatest ever. I can't think of who has Aaron Rodgers played with. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, was Jordy Nelson great because he was Jordy Nelson or because he played with Aaron Rodgers? I think it's the latter. You take Aaron Rodgers and you put him on the Patriots teams or even the Colts. Peyton Manning was good, but they also spent pretty much his entire career building the offense around him.
Yeah.
He had everything he needed. He always had a top line. He had a Hall of Fame receiver he was thrown to all the time. He went from Marvin Harrison to T.Y. Hilton.
Let's not forget Reggie Wayne in there also.
Reggie Wayne. Who was the dude?
Dallas Clark.
No, there's the other guy. I'm not gonna be able to think of his name. He went to play for some small Division III school in Ohio. I can remember that about him. I just can't remember his name. He played for the Redskins for a while. It doesn't matter. Pierre Garçon. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was there. But then they also had Dwight Freeney, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had Dwight Freeney. You could think of guys on the defense that they had. You can't really do that with Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure if I had Lisa on here, she could rattle off names.
Sure.
But
Clay Matthews, and I would, if you hadn't said AJ Hawk, I wouldn't have said it. I would say Clay Matthews.
Well, like I said, I know AJ Hawk because he played for Ohio State, and I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. So
I know they had Charles Woodson for a little while.
At the very, very beginning of
when they
I
won,
mean, but he
won a Super Bowl.
yeah, but at the same time, he was Charles Woodson, but he wasn't Charles Woodson.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like he wasn't the Charles Woodson that made himself Charles Woodson by that point. He was still good, but he wasn't Charles Woodson. So yeah, I mean, it's always interesting. It's like there needs to be a series that does what if. And it's like, what if, Aaron Rodgers ended up playing for the Colts all those years and Peyton Manning was in Green Bay, you know? And what's crazy is Rodgers slipped to – did he get drafted in the second round or was it just late first round? Late first.
Late first. I think it was like 24.
Or something like, yeah. That's crazy. Got time for one more?
Let's call it a day, right? But let's talk about next week and then sign off. So next week's a little weird, right? Like we have the barbecue on Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my laptop with me so we can go live from there.
Yeah, I was gonna bring my laptop and my mic too, so we can definitely interview some people from the page, maybe get their takes on their team season.
Let's see. Let's do that, and that'll be because Sunday you're traveling.
Yeah. Sunday morning I get up, and then Liesl. So Liesl's actually in that weightlifting competition next week. They keep changing her time. So before she was going to lift at 4, so I'd be able to get back and see her. Now she might be lifting while I'm in the air. It could change again. We'll see. But yeah, Sunday I'm going to be kind of MIA because of flying and then Liesl's competition. But yeah, Saturday it's going to be an interesting podcast. If nothing else, you want to record the draft at all, or are we gonna? I feel like that'll be a real long.
That would be super long.
Yeah,
we can do the first round.
Yeah, we can do the first round and maybe come back the following week and do some of the highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
All right.
Man, you ready to pick me up? You got
Yeah, man. Just be waiting. I'll text you. It's gonna be a stop and jump in and go. Let's do it.
I'm pumped. I'm excited. I finally get to do this barbecue thing.
Yeah. It's always a good time. So no reason why this one shouldn't be.
I also want to report on how many times you take a dip. You take a dip Friday on that dunk tank you were talking about.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, man. I'll see you literally.
I'll literally see you on Saturday, Friday. And then we'll have some fun on Saturday, a little different version of the podcast for episode 27. And yeah, that's it. We need some sponsors. That's all we need.
Yeah, maybe we'll finally get Atticus back on this thing.
We'll get Atticus. We'll get a couple other people.
I'll catch you next week, man.
All right, man.
Well, everybody, that wraps up our show for this week. Thanks for listening.